Appreciate it. Hope you had a good weekend. The voice of Wall Street is back. That's when you know it's real. And Charlie Pellet will have more on the markets in about 20 minutes time here on Balance of Power. Thanks for being here on the Tuesday edition, even though I keep saying it's Monday. Bloomberg Radio, satellite radio channel 121, available on YouTube as well. I'm just trying to get my head around the sphere in Washington, D.C. Was this part of Donald Trump's vision? You've got the Arc de Triomphe over there on the other side of Memorial Bridge. Well, there it is now if you're with us on YouTube. Look at this artist rendering here from the company, the Sphere. These are the guys, from Las Vegas. We're getting one here. Washington Post was the first to hit this. The company saying it will be the first mini sphere. Be right off the Potomac River down there. If you know National Harbor, that's where this is going to go, across from Old Town Alexandria. When you fly in, you're going to see the sphere looking up at you, apparently. This will be a 6,000-seat sphere. It would open in 2030. A third of the size, they say, of the one in Vegas at half the cost. $1 billion? They could take $1 billion to build that thing? The company says it'll provide $1 billion in economic activity annually. But we're worried about data centers taking up all the power. What the heck is this thing? How do you get the juice to run this thing? We're worried about planes being able to see their way into the airport. What's going to happen when you go out to dinner in Old Town? You're going to see this big thing blinking at you from across the river? This is why they didn't want one in London. And I think the sphere is cool. Nathan didn't know we were going to be talking about this, but he's in here now. Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Policy Analyst. You ever been to the one in Vegas?
I have not.
It's pretty cool, though, right? I wanted to go. I just didn't want to go to it here.
Well, if we can get like a 4-week run of the Eagles or something like that, then maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well, I didn't think about that. We get the big residencies now. I live down there, though, across the river. I'm going to see like this false sunrise all the time with this thing. It's a really bright thing that we're adding to the skyline here. There's a big, what do they call it? The big Ferris wheel already. Changing D.C. as we know it.
Well, it's National Harbor, and I say this as a Virginian. Like, I've been there maybe twice in my life, so, maybe the sphere will be
Don't tell Glenn Ivey that when he comes in here. We've got to talk about what's happening in the markets vis-a-vis geopolitics, and I want to ask you about what's happening on the Hill. All of these things overlap somehow. It's curious that the Speaker of the House is speaking to British Parliament today. Well, we don't have a funding mechanism yet in Washington. The president's upset half of Europe. He's on his way to Davos. Yeah. James asking, will it be the Trump sphere? We'll have to put his name on it, right? So what are you getting phone calls about? Because the bond market doesn't love what's happening with all of this. The stock market, well, I mean, it was coming into this at all-time highs, but it seems to be pretty upset today, too.
Well, many times in this program, I said there's 3 ways of implementing policy. It's regulation, legislation, and executive orders. Mm-hmm. But there's a 4th way, and this is what the clients are calling on, is what are we getting from the bully pulpit? What are we getting from President Trump saying, either on social media or even to a bunch of CEOs saying, I want you to do something. Think of this credit card interest cap at 10%.
Yeah.
Today's January 20th. It's supposed to be effective today. I actually went back and checked my credit card. It's not capped at 10%. So the question here is that a lot of these clients are calling and they're saying, look, how does the bully pulpit work for President Trump? How does he influence policy? And you sort of get this idea that like headline risk comes out, the stocks moved towards a headline. Think of private equity with Blackstone when he announced that they was going to ban corporate purchases of single-family homes. Blackstone reacted to that. It's actually a small portion of their business. It's actually not all that important to them, but the stock still moved. So you have this headline risk, then you have this analysis of what actually he means, then you have to try and figure out how does he use the bully pulpit to try and change behavior, because the other ways of doing stuff, legislation, that doesn't happen very often, executive orders, somewhat limited, or it goes to the courts, regulation takes time.
You need to write like a Trump playbook. I mean, for real, that's what you're talking about, right? This is all based on the history of the last year.
Well, if
we were sitting here 1 year ago today, you probably wouldn't have answered it like that.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And think about it where we are in terms of the election. So we have the midterms in November.
Yep.
By around April or May, all 435 members of the House and 33 members of the Senate, they're going to start getting itchy. They're like, I don't want to be here in Washington. I want to go home and campaign because my opponent is campaigning against me. So legislation dries up. So what do presidents do in that time frame, and what do they do in their second portion of their second term when they become that dreaded word lame duck?
Travel, baby.
They travel, they go international, and in President Trump's case, they use the pulpit to try and change the policy.
Really interesting. Is Davos a policy gathering, or is this a scolding? Is this more about rhetoric or policy this week?
So I had this thought this morning as I was driving in. Why is President Trump delivering a speech on affordability in Davos and not in
front of billionaires?
So
he can scold them, call them out? Is that good optics?
You know what? That could be part of I'm just spitballing here, but like if you're trying to do an affordability speech in an election year, you would think you would do it in Arizona, North Carolina,
right.
So Louisiana with Senator Cassidy's stuff that's going on down there, but it's not. He's doing it in Davos. And so you're going to see this speech tomorrow, and it's most likely going to say there's an executive order on affordability coming, housing, credit card cap, maybe the swipe fee. But a lot of it is going to either need Congress, or it's going to go back to this idea of looking these CEOs in the eye and saying, look, I want you to do something. And in that credit card space, when you have a company like Bilt saying, look, we're going to put out a credit card capped at 10% for 1 year, and people start calling it Trump card, other banks, other companies, they may want to actually get in, because at the end of the day, for these corporations, they don't want to be in a fight with the White House. They just want to be left alone.
Who's watching? Cece's asking a great question. Like, who are normal people who are, don't subscribe to terminals, trade stocks, invest themselves in the economy every day? Are they watching anything at Davos anyhow? They see all these, anchor men and women out in the snow with big coats on. What the heck are they doing? Is this mainstream?
Well, I like to think most of the Bloomberg clients are all watching Live Go tomorrow, and they're going to watch it all.
But, I'm sure.
But, one of the questions we got from clients is, do voters actually care about geopolitical matters?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, to a certain extent, but affordability is going to be the message that goes into the midterms, and affordability is the message that we're going to be looking at for 2026 in terms of U.S. domestic policy. And what can the president do to actually bring prices down? I was a giant over the weekend, and a bag of Doritos, a large bag of Doritos, was $8.29.
Yes, sir.
When you look at data centers and electricity prices going up for here in the region, that's certainly important to watch about. But again, from the president's standpoint, there's only so much he can do via unilateral executive action. So it's going to be really important to see if he can find other methods to influence policy.
Was that the family size or the party size?
This is the party size.
Party size. Not to be confused with the fund size, which would be very tiny.
But my family could take down the entire bag. It's
no doubt. I just don't get, why is the small one the fun one? That's just strange psychology. All of this as the House returns today, and we've got less than 2 weeks to a shutdown, but nobody's saying that it's a shutdown. In fact, we've seen a whole bunch of funding bills actually get some action here. As of late yesterday, we're trying to finalize Defense, Transportation, HUD, Labor, HHS, Education, and Homeland Security, the latter of which is the most difficult one because of concerns about language surrounding ICE enforcement. Do we get this done this way, or is everyone going to have to be pulled back into town next week for a last-minute something?
I think it's going to be close, but if there is going to be a continuing resolution, it's going to be a quick one. I don't think this is going to kick into late March or anything. Okay. I think they're getting close. The reason being here is you have the election. It feels very different than the pre-shutdown, week before we had the one last year. Yeah. And because Democrats look at the last shutdown and they said, look, we came out of this pretty decent with independence. Let's not upset the balance, especially as we've had success in Virginia, New Jersey, et cetera. Republicans look at the same shutdown and they say, look, we got the blame amongst independents. Let's not go back to a situation like that. Because at the end of the day, the midterms is what they're thinking about right now. And the shutdown just really doesn't play into any political strategy of why you'd want to shut the government down. I don't see anybody saying, outside of like Senator Coons, for example, there are some people out there that are trying to use this for political messaging, but amongst the rank and file and the establishment, I really don't see that those words being thrown around.
Well, that's nice to hear, I guess. Is the debate over Obamacare subsidies on ice for now? What happens when lawmakers come back?
I think it remains on ice. Our colleague Dwayne Wright, has been writing about this all the time, and he still uses words like skeptical and long odds because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people on the Republican side that don't want to see these subsidies continue. And it's just extremely difficult for a solution to come together. And that combined with an election year, I just don't see it happening.
So sit back with us for a minute. It's only once a week we get to sit on the porch here with our friend Nathan. And I'm just curious what's going through your mind 1 year later. I was sitting here in this room, sitting next to Kaylee Lyons 1 year ago. Remember, it was like 1 degree outside. They had to move the swearing in indoors. I'm surprised I haven't seen more archival footage of the president in the rotunda and Joe Biden and everybody else. Remember, they were waving at him as Joe Biden took off behind the Capitol. And then what happened? Your phone has been ringing for a year about so many different crises. You went through Liberation Day. You've seen the so-called taco trade. And the way you just walked me through your interpretation over what's happening now suggests that we've learned a lot in the last year, changing the way that you even do your business. Has it changed the way people interface with you, the questions they ask?
Yeah, it's all about President Trump's social media strategy, all about his public persona as opposed to the process. You know, we actually thought there would be more legislation in 2025. You know, obviously that didn't happen. We had the one big beautiful bill, and people in Washington are beginning to utter that word that presidents hate, and that's called lame duck. And, you know, that's one of the things where presidents then begin to try and influence policy through their own persona, and President Trump has really done that. So I think what happens here is rather than looking at the process of how things get done, and look, there are still deregulatory efforts. The banks in particular are still really looking forward to this Basel III endgame G-SIB surcharge proposals that are coming out. You're looking at $60 billion in capital that potentially could be returned. So deregulation is still there. But the question now is, how does President Trump influence policy via executive order and through the bully pulpit? And that has changed the game tremendously because no president has acted like that in the last 25 years.
Fascinating. What piece of legislation were you most surprised did not get passed? Was it clarity? Was it something altogether different?
You know, clarity I always thought was going to be a 2026 issue. I didn't think it was going to be 2025. I think that there was a little bit more on the defense side that we were, you know, Senator Graham's $150 billion that had to go through the one big beautiful bill. But, you know, going into this election, every sector had its own small piece of legislation. And those haven't passed.
Amazing. Really interesting, Nathan. How chippy is the State of the Union going to be? We're screaming from the rafters this year?
It's going to be, I'm going to steal my Bloomberg popcorn and take it with me.
Okay, fair enough. You have odds on a shutdown? I haven't even asked. You still at 30?
30.
30. All right. This is the guy right here, the real thing, Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence. Nathan, thank you as always. We'll assemble our political panel next. Rick and Jeannie coming in next, only on Bloomberg.